Hey. On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Rheia by Oathbreaker, which is not a Jaime Lannister themed band. Just want to clear that up right off the bat.
They'll have both their hands.
Yeah, all the members, as far as I know, have both their hands, not Jaime Lannister themed. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
And today we're talking about Rheia, which is the 2016 album from the Belgian band Oathbreaker.
They're from Flanders.
They're from Flanders in Belgium, which is in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, which is something that I learned today, because Belgium is a very linguistically diverse country. You've got, I guess, Flemish, but then there's also French and probably some German-speaking areas. It's kind of like Switzerland, where they can't decide on one, so they're like, fuck it.
It's been many places.
It's been many places. Yeah. Poor Belgium. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I think this is, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on, so I think we'll actually have plenty to talk about for once. I just on last week and some of the other things, other than the extremely spicy chicken that I ate, I kind of realized I find it hard, and that's not to say that we can't bring these to the show, but I often find it hard to talk about just like good death metal albums if they're not like conceptual, because as someone who's musically illiterate, I appreciate the guitars, and I love, a good riff and good guitar work.
Which are on this particular work.
On this one as well, and there was a lot of that on the Arch Enemy album we talked about last week. But if there's not a lot of like really deep conceptual work, it's tough for me to latch onto and find things to talk about. Sure. So in the future, I'll try to do better. I don't, by any means, I don't want to limit ourselves to only doing concept albums, because I mean, there are a million concept albums out there, but I feel like we'd run out of steam at some point. So
this one is a concept album.
This one is very much it has a concept. It has a very unified vibe to it that we can get to. It's not like it's not like a Dream Theater style concept album. Nobody's getting reincarnated, and
I was a little.
You were a little reincarnated
while listening to this. I was reincarnated a little bit.
Into what?
This piece, in ham.
Into ham.
I was ham for a moment.
You became ham.
I don't know.
Well, you got to watch out. People find out that you turned into ham. They're gonna come after you. Don't let Brock Lesnar know where you're at. I know for a fact that man loves ham.
He does love his ham.
I'm just picturing Brock Lesnar, just in his house in the woods in South Dakota.
Or is it Minnesota?
Or maybe he lives in Canada. I don't remember, but he lives out in the woods somewhere.
Eating ham.
And he's in his mansion in the woods and just eating an entire leg of ham by himself. And then his supermodel wife comes and...
I want that as a vacation.
To Brock Lesnar's house? To eat
Brock
ham?
Lesnar's hanging out with his supermodel wife eating a leg of ham,
Yeah, that's the dream, right? That's the dream.
Yeah.
So a couple of things to talk about. I've got some new equipment. Last week I noticed every time we put beer down on the table, there was a very, very obnoxious sound of just vibration coming through the mounts that we have. So I purchased some shock mounts for the microphones, which are interesting little elastic bits that are mounted to a metal frame. But the elastic bits are actually what holds the microphone up via tension. So the idea is that the elastic springs kind of take some of the vibration, and since they are not metal, hopefully don't conduct it into the microphone.
It's a shock absorber.
It's a shock absorber, basically. And it came with these new pop filters / windscreens, which are much more direct and mount directly to the microphone.
They're neat.
I figured we'd use those because they're a lot less obtrusive than the pop filters that I was using before. And so far I'm liking them. I can look at you.
Yeah,
easier.
That's a big circular.
Yeah,
sock.
I can see your face, so that's nice.
Ooh, I don't know how nice that.
Some other things that I wanted to talk about. I watched a couple of movies this week. You've seen one of them. I had a weird theme earlier this week. I didn't continue it last night. I ended up doing some other things, but on Sunday night I watched a movie called Mud that came out in 2010, starring Matthew McConaughey and
I saw
Ty.
it new.
You saw it when it came out.
Yes.
Cool. Nice. Cool. I don't know what else to say.
Whoa,
dude. Congratulations.
You're with it.
Congratulations, dude. So Mud is a movie that came out in 2010, and it's sort of early reconnaissance. You know, it was sort of before the reconnaissance fully took off with like Dallas Buyers Club and whatnot.
Lincoln Lawyer and all those.
I think it was Lincoln Lawyer in 2009?
That might have actually been.
I think that is the first movie in the reconnaissance.
It might have been.
At any rate, he stars in it. He's technically, he's one of the protagonists. There are two protagonists. A very young Ty Sheridan plays the other protagonist, who's a young boy named Ellis. And Matthew McConaughey is the title character of Mud, who is this sort of survivalist, redneck type who's living on a deserted island in the middle of the Mississippi River.
Potentially wanted for something.
Yeah, he's wanted by the police, hence why he's hiding out there in a boat that is stuck up in a tree. And these two young boys happen upon him while they're looking for this boat. The cast is absolutely stacked beyond Matthew McConaughey. I almost said Makalakahookahhonahey.
Yes,
he became Hawaiian.
He did. Makalakahookahhonahey, Makalakahookahhonahey.
You've got Reese Witherspoon.
And without her spoon.
Damn it. Michael Shannon is very briefly in there. This was sort of before Michael Shannon took off as well. But Michael Shannon's in there. I'm trying to remember the actor who played the dad. He's not huge, but he's been in a lot of stuff, and I thought he was great. I can't remember the actor's name, but he was the preacher in season 1 of Deadwood, and he was great in the movie.
Yeah, and she was also in the horror.
Oh, Bird Box.
Was she in Bird Box?
She was in Bird Box. She gets hit by a bus. I haven't bothered to watch that because I think it looks fucking terrible.
A lot of people have said it's pretty good. My twins said it was good.
I think it's good for like the general Netflix viewing audience.
Sure.
I just don't think I would enjoy it.
It's got a lot of hype. Let's say that. I want to remember her name before you get to it.
I can't even remember the name. Glass was the name of the movie. I couldn't even remember the name of that. We're starting off great here.
This is spectacular.
Sarah Paulson.
Sarah Paulson. Her name is Sarah Paulson.
Her name is Sarah Paulson.
Her name is Sarah Paulson.
She's on the cast. She plays Ellis's mom. Ellis is the character played by Ty Sheridan.
Yep.
Who's the really the main character of the movie, and it's a movie that's just a lot about growing up and coming of age and learning to accept. I think one of the main things is maturing into a realistic view on love. I think is the big thing. I won't spoil the rest of it, but that is a really big part of the movie.
It's a 9-year-old movie.
Yeah,
it's so weird. 2010 is 9 years ago.
I honestly don't want to spoil it because I think it's sort of a well hidden little gem, relatively well hidden. So if you like Matthew McConaughey, I fucking said it again, Matthew McConaughey. If you like Matthew McConaughey, I got this hitch in my throat for some reason where I can't say his last name.
Matthew McConaughey.
If you like, all right, man. Definitely check out Mud. I think it's one of his best performances. I haven't seen Dallas Buyers Club to compare it to, but as far as recent, tried to say it again, McConaughey movies, it's up there. I don't know what the problem is.
You've developed a weird speech impediment where you cannot say the name of
very,
actor.
very specific speech impediment. The world's most specific speech impediment.
He can't say McConaughey.
Now you can't say it either. No. Then the night after, on Monday night, I watched a movie called Joe, which is a 2013 movie, also starring Ty Sheridan, and alongside the main character, Joe, again, an eponymous role from Nicolas Cage. And it's, I think, widely considered to be the best movie that Nicolas Cage has done in the last probably decade, besides the recent film Mandy, which I've heard very highly
great
praised.
Things about that, yeah.
And I put that on a list that I made earlier today of movies that I need to watch from this year. And I've heard lots of really good things about Mandy, but Joe is also very good. Again, it takes place in a very rural setting. The first movie took place in Arkansas. Mud took place in Arkansas. This one, Joe, takes place in rural Texas. He's sort of a very rough, very deeply troubled and sort of violent man, where it sort of hides just underneath the surface.
Nicolas Cage.
Right. And also Joe, the character.
Right.
He's
also Joe.
He runs a tree poisoning business in rural Texas, where they go into areas of trees that this logging company that is trying to set up a nursery wants to use, and they go in and they poison the trees, and the trees die and later get removed. Sure. And it's replanted with wood that people want to buy, basically. And there is Ty Sheridan's character, who is a young man with a drifting family. His father is an abusive alcoholic, and he goes to work for Joe, and the plot sort of unfolds from there. Both these movies, by the way, free to watch with an Amazon Prime subscription. That's just where I watch all my movies. I don't want to plug Amazon too much, just because we're obviously not sponsored by them. But
however, if Amazon does want to sponsor, we won't turn you down.
Hey, Jeff. But yeah, I watch a lot of my movies on Amazon just because it's convenient, and there's a lot on there these days. So I end up doing that. But yeah, I really enjoyed both those movies. They're both somewhat similar premise and similar settings, but very different takes. I think Joe is much less a coming-of-age movie than Mud is. Both of them are character studies, though.
Sure.
And I really, really enjoyed both of them. I suppose it's about time for us to get to talking about this album.
Sure.
So the album that we're talking about today, as I said earlier, is the 2016 album Rheia from the Belgian band Oathbreaker. Their genre is really hard to nail down. They have some post-hardcore influence, lots of just post in general. This album specifically has a lot of black metal influence on it. Their earlier work, not quite as much black metal influence, but generally they post something is the best way to describe them. There's a lot of hardcore and metalcore and that sort of thing going on. Black gaze is a funny term.
It is.
But that one fits in with them.
Like Titus.
Titus? Why is Titus funny?
Sorry. From what's the TV show?
Oh, you're talking about Titus Andromedon from The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
Okay. I getcha.
Yeah, I truly did enjoy this album.
Yeah,
let's keep in mind this is Female February.
Yeah, we are in Female February.
Yeah.
So the lead singer of this band, her name is I wrote it down over here, Caro Tanguy. She is Belgian, and they started this band about I think it would have been 11 years ago now. They've been around for a little while. They've released 3 albums. Rheia is their third and most recent. Their last 2 albums have been released by Deathwish Records, which is a independent record label run by Jacob Bannon from Converge. And their catalog, I suppose, the Deathwish catalog contains a lot of bands of this caliber, I think, where they are there's a very specific sound that Deathwish seems to have. And this fits right in. So sort of the concepts on this, there's not like a particular story, but this is a very, very personal album for Caro. I don't know exactly how to pronounce her name. Caro. I don't know. Yeah. But this is a very personal album for her, and a lot more so. I was reading an interview earlier today, a lot more so than some of their earlier work, mostly about her growing up, and some of the topics tend to be depression, neglect, addiction, and just sort of all of that based around her experience growing up and with her parents. She talks about how when she grew up, her parents had her very young. Her dad and mom ended up getting divorced very quickly when she was little, and her dad basically just went off and started a new family, and her mom was a drug addict and just kind of...
Those things like songs like, Needles in the Skin.
Yeah, those sort of subjects come up there. And she lived with her grandparents, and basically she says she kind of raised herself for the most part, and ended up taking care of everyone around her but herself. And so this album is really about that experience of her growing up and how it continues to affect her. And apparently sort of the impetus for that was I assume she still is in a relationship with the lead guitarist for the band. They were dating at the time that this came out, and she had been talking about growing up, and they had grown up together. But even him having grown up with her, they were having conversations, and he was like, "You've never told me about any of this. I didn't know any of this about you." And so it sort of became a self-help thing for her to write about this and put it into the music. And so, yeah, it's a deeply personal album, an extremely emotionally heavy album.
A lot of emotion in here.
And I just want to kind of dive into some of my favorite bits. We'll start with favorite songs, I guess. My favorite song is, I think, kind of predictably, it's the second song on the album, which is the first full song.
Sure.
Because the first track is kind of
a cappella.
Yeah, the first track is a little a cappella, and it's kind of more of just an intro. The first full song is called Second Son of R, and holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit on a biscuit.
Indeed.
It is, I think, the ending especially, the last 60 seconds of that track it gives me goosebumps every single time.
Something I want to note about this album, they're very good at ending songs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everything sort of, on a lot of their songs, things tend to build to a very intense crescendo, to the point where maybe it's a little predictable, but it never seems to get old to me.
Right.
Even if it is predictable, it doesn't get old, which is the mark of good songwriting, I think. So Second Son of R includes... It starts off heavy, very fast, lots of black metal tremolo picking, and slowly there are the verses. Well, they're not really verses. I guess it's more of the chorus in a way. It doesn't really follow a strict verse, chorus, verse thing, but the verses tend to be screamed, and what passes as a chorus is almost more like another verse. What passes as a chorus is clean sung with the line, "Don't make me pity you, don't make me pity you," in the end. And then it goes back into the fast bits, and then there's a longer lull in there, and then it just ends with the most intense, like, last minute where it just, the vocals and the lyrics just devolve into screaming. There's no words. It is just some of the most intense and harrowing screamed vocals I have ever heard. I don't know what other words I have for it other than it gives me goosebumps every single time. I've listened to this track far more than I have a lot of the other ones on the album.
Yeah. Since
I found out about Oathbreaker, and it still gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. It's just harrowing. And extremely effective, I think, because it's communicating a very clear emotion of just utter despair and anguish and anger, and there's a lot of times there's no words for that. So
she has words for it.
She has words for it and uses them on the rest of the album, but they were talking about when they were recording that and how that came about, and she had been sort of struggling with, what do I say here? What do I say here? I don't know exactly what to do, and finally, they just settled on, well, what if we just don't say anything and just let the emotion just come entirely out and get all this buildup out of the way in the most intense way possible. And I love it. I think my second favorite song is a song called Immortals.
That's my favorite song.
That's your favorite song?
That is my favorite song.
I don't begrudge you for that in the least. That is a fantastic track as well.
The intense sort of, and they're obviously digitally made harmonies.
Yeah. There's a lot of double tracking.
Yeah,
on this.
double. It's well. I don't know if that is double. If you listen closely
if it
to
is,
it's actually it seems to be affected. It seems like
I'd say there is an effect on some of her clean singing.
Because it's what I like about a lot of her clean singing is that she's not perfect on pitch.
Yeah, it's a lot of her clean singing is very. The best word I can describe for it that is, I think, very apt for the subject matter of the album is frail.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of her clean singing sounds very frail, a little thin. There are at times where maybe it is a little grating, but I always appreciate the effect in the atmosphere.
Right, because it fits.
It fits extremely well, and I sort of have to trick my brain a little bit to be to ignore the lack of perfect pitch, because that is something that as a listener of modern music you can get kind of spoiled with in regards to clean singing.
Sure.
So you have to sort of convince your brain like, no, this is stylistically, this is what works. Because I think if they were all perfect on pitch, I don't think it would have the same effect.
No, it wouldn't. No, her singing reminds me a lot of, and it's a band that's nothing like this band.
Okay.
A band from the early 1990s was an alternative music, and you probably don't remember the alternative music craze back in
like alt metal and all that stuff.
Back before you were born.
Yeah. I remember everything that happened before I was born.
There's a band called Belly.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, no, her singing reminds me of her a lot.
Okay.
And with the band Belly, a lot of it was very poppy and the vocals are very frail and sort of off key like this, with a lot of reverb like this one has. Reminds me of that same type of vocals, but in this is way more intense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the length. Did the length wear on you at all?
It didn't.
Okay.
It actually didn't.
It didn't with me either, because this is a 63-minute album.
I re-listened to it.
Me too.
Yeah, I had to listen to it again. In fact, I would play like Immortals when that song was over. I'm like, I got to
go back, because there is a lot to digest on this, I think. Some things about the album. The name Rhea is the name of a
Danny DeVito's wife.
That is true.
Yeah,
Rhea Perlman, Danny DeVito's. Well, they might. I think they're separated.
Are they separated?
I don't know if they're divorced, but they had been separated for a while.
I feel like they made it.
Maybe. All the impressions that I seem to get from both of them, mostly Danny DeVito, because I don't know if Rhea Perlman really does all that many interviews these days, because Danny is generally busier. A lot of the interviews I've seen seem to suggest that it's a very mutual thing. There's not a lot of animosity. It's just like, we got to take some time apart, that sort of thing. They always struck me as like a very stable Hollywood couple.
Right.
But Rhea, in the context of this album and most everything else, refers to the Titan from Greek mythology, who is the mother of the principal, I believe, 8 gods of the Greek pantheon, the 8 big gods, including Hera, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, and I think others along the line as well.
The father being Kronos.
Yes, the father being Kronos, who then ate them.
Right.
And they ended up choosing the name after the name doesn't necessarily have any direct correlation to any lyrical content on the album. It's more of a conceptual relation to this idea of Caro taking care of everybody but herself as she was growing up, and really not paying attention to herself and that sort of thing. And when you're the idea of this Titan that birthed these 8 extremely powerful beings and then is forgotten. No one ever talks about Rhea.
No.
Other than she's the mother of the gods.
Sure, they talk about Kronos and Zeus and
Poseidon and Hades and all that.
Kratos and all the other ones.
But nobody talks, yes, and Kratos. Boy. I need to get back into God of War. I've been on a bit of a lull lately.
No.
I don't think there's any specific reason other than I suppose I started playing Rising Storm 2.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that game, but I've kind of become a little addicted to it just because it's the only like really really, really heavily themed Vietnam shooter I've played.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are other games that take place during Vietnam, like the first Black Ops game. But generally, like Vietnam is just a setting they use. It's not really the rest of it. Whereas there's no campaign, there's no story in Rising Storms 2. It's a multiplayer game. You're in Vietnam. Oh, that'd be UPS with my headphones. I'll be right back.
Okay. We're all alone. Just you and I. Let's talk about Satan. Yes, that's right. Our Lord and Master, Satan. So anyway, Satan. I'll wait till I get home. Oh, here he comes. Never mind. Shh. Pretend like you didn't say anything.
You're still talking?
No? What book is that?
I've got Dune sitting there staring at me because it's not being read.
Mr. Herbert there.
I got a little worried that the UPS driver was taking off, and so I had the door opened as he was getting...
put the rock in there.
No, that wasn't me. I thought he... Because it was the outer door.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was taking off, and so he was getting in his truck and closed. I was like, hey, no, wait. But then I looked back and realized he had left the package on the floor. Because last night when I got my shock mounts, they were standing there waiting at the door.
You're all out of breath.
I went up and down the stairs quickly. There's a dog
Yeah.
down the hall that every time I just walk by that door
Uh-huh.
always barks. And it's like, come on, seriously.
Wow.
People live here. Dog.
So you could have a dog here if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah. It's just extra rent and the deposit. I can't remember what the deposit was, but it's more than the actual deposit I paid.
Oh, geez.
I paid a $99 deposit on this place.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was like a special deal maybe, but I paid a very cheap deposit on this place. And if you get animals, it was like twice what I paid originally or something like that.
Steal.
And it's like $25 extra a month for a cat, and I think like 30 or 40 for a dog.
You should get a cat or a dog.
I know. I've been saying I should get a cat forever and ever and ever, but... So where were we?
Talking about Rhea.
Yeah, just she's not talked about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's... I think it was interesting, and it was interesting to the band, and that's why they chose the name.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned earlier this album is quite a bit more black metal inspired than their previous work, which I generally find to be more closer to post-hardcore and a lot closer in sound to something like Converge, which I think is probably why the band's work appealed to Jacob Bannon when he found out about it and listened to it, and not necessarily that like, oh, these guys sound like us. They're going on my label.
Sure.
And I think it's a lot more to do with similar mindsets. I think the types of bands that usually end up on Deathwish are bands that Jacob feels have a similar ethic. And it's almost like a genre thing where it's like, if you like one band on Deathwish, you're probably going to like other bands that have been on Deathwish. One other band that you can make comparisons to is Death Heaven, and they have also been on Deathwish at certain points in their career.
Sure.
And so I think that's an easy and a fair comparison to make.
I can hear the comparison.
Whew. Gonna catch my breath.
You all right? He lives on the 3rd floor, just so you all know for reference here.
I'm also very unhealthy anyway, but I want to open up my headphones. Do you have like a Leatherman or a knife on you or something?
I don't. I left it at home. I don't have my knife.
What kind of man doesn't have a utility knife with him? Apparently I don't either. Got my folding knife.
There you go.
An audio unboxing video.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, let's see. Ooh, look at that box.
Look at this. Look at this big old box.
You have a big box.
God damn it. Let's do some ASMR here.
Yeah, there we go.
With me. I'm cutting towards myself right now.
Toward his face.
because I'm a smart man.
There you go. Back toward... Now I know he's going to flip it up and... There
Some
you go.
lovely ASMR for you out there.
Ooh.
Ooh, look. Plastic inflatable bed.
Oh, there you go. Go for it. Make it happen. Not going to do it. Oh! Hey! In your headphones, you got some Sennheisers in there.
My new Sennheiser HD Pro 280s that I decided to get because I thought it was time for me to get new on-ear headphones. But,
Are you going to wear those on air? Are you going to take them in the studio with you?
no, I don't think so. I meant on ear. Did I say on air?
You did say on ear.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you meant on air.
I probably won't. I'll probably take my old ones to work to use at my desk. Even though, as you told me the other day, they'll buy you headphones.
Yeah, they will. I didn't buy my headphones.
Yeah, but I don't know. We'll see. Other things we made the comparison to Deaf Heaven. Some other people have made a comparison to Ghost Bath, and I think the especially where that stands out to me is the last part on Second Son of R, where there's just sort of the wails, the just very painful sort of wails and howls and whatnot.
The whales.
We have to find them. Oh, I thought you were doing a Gojira thing. But Ghost Bath uses that a lot, although their sort of cries are more like keening rather than like a scream.
Sure.
They tend to do, very loud sort of, just very loud crying noises, which can be kind of cheesy at times. But I don't know. I like watching them live at the very least. But yeah, that's another comparison. Another comparison I've seen people make online, specifically with Rhea, is comparing them to Mirkur a little bit.
Really, to Mirkur?
I don't know if it's simply just because
it's a girl singer.
Female vocalist who does clean and screamed vocals, but I can kind of see it a little bit simply by virtue of there's some black metal influence on this, but Mirkur is generally a lot more into the folk aspect of it, and Amelie's vocals are generally much more I guess angelic is the word. I think I used that when we talked about them.
Yeah, here they're just soul-rending.
Yeah, here they're it's painful and extremely emotional and very
in the good way.
In the good way, yes. It is I think much more emotionally effective in some ways, at least from a what's the word I'm looking for? From like a gratification point of view. Mirkur's got different things going on. Let's see. I mentioned that. One other thing that I wanted to mention is they have a fantastic live performance from Audio Tree. Audio Tree is a studio in, I don't remember where they're located, but they do like live stream performances.
Not in Belgium.
Not in Belgium. I think they're in the US or Canada. And they do live streamed performances of certain bands. And that's actually what like got me into Oathbreaker, is because I was on a kick at work while I was doing I was in the back room where I no longer typically do like my logs for the day.
Sure.
But for like the first couple of months I was working, I was doing
his music logs.
Yeah, my music logs.
It's not a toilet.
Yeah. I was just laying some logs in the back production booth. No, I would do it on the computer back there, and you snorted there. But I would, I would do my work back there, and I would watch like live performances. That's how I started listening to some like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, because they had a really great live performance on KEXP and that sort of thing. And I watched their performance on Audio Tree, and at least Second Son of R sounds exactly like the studio version.
Really?
Slightly less high quality, but everything else sounds pretty much exactly the same. It was a perfect live performance, and I saw that and was like, all right, I'm done sleeping on Oathbreaker, because I had heard of them, hadn't listened, watched that, and I was hooked. So I suggest you can listen to it as an album on Spotify. You can listen to their performances there. It's one of the best like 1-to-1 recreations of a studio performance that I've seen. It was really, really good.
I'll have to catch that.
And it adds a whole nother element to see the band perform it live as well.
That's almost always the case.
Yeah, very much so. It was interesting because I don't think in that entire live performance, I don't think you really see Caro's face at all, because it's just covered by her hair.
Really?
She's, going around and, just moving with the music. Mm-hmm. And like you can't even hardly see her face the entire time. It's just completely obscured by her hair. And it was really, really cool to see that. And I thought it was really cool. The album itself, to talk about the reception a little bit, was received pretty well. Most of their work has been received quite well. It wasn't like a unanimous universal acclaim, but generally speaking, people had a pretty positive reaction to it. It's got a score of 76 on Metacritic. It was, I don't know if I have any star ratings here. It ended up on a lot of people's album of the year list for 2016. It got placed at number 50 of the top 50 albums for the publication Treble. Consequence of Sound placed it at number 9 for their top 10. Terrorizer placed it at number 3 on their albums of the year for 2016.
Like the band Terrorizer?
No, it would be a publication.
A publication.
Probably in reference to the band or maybe even the Pig Destroyer album. And Noisy and the 100 best albums of 2016 gave it the number 20. Exclaim rated it 8 out of 10. Pitchfork gave it a 7.8 out of 10. Pitchfork is sort of notoriously hipstery and kind of hard to please.
Sure. So if they gave it a 7.8.
Yeah. Pop Matters gave it a 6 out of 10, but it's a website called Pop Matters, so who gives a shit? Sputnik Music gave it a 3.8 out of 5, which is almost a 4, so that's all right. I personally would rate it pretty highly. I enjoy this quite a lot. As I said earlier in the episode, I tend to really latch on to very emotionally heavy albums. Mm-hmm. And I think that relates back to the fact that I'm not a musically literate person.
You latch on to the emotion rather than the music itself.
Yeah. I don't have a good head for songwriting, or I don't know anything about music theory. I can recognize a good riff, but for me it's a lot more about how the music makes me feel. And if it makes me feel anything at all, then it's already better than something that's like, this is good, but it just doesn't make me feel anything. So if a music can move me in some manner, then I will latch on to it and love it to death.
Yeah, because I listen to the music a lot of times because we hand off music to each other that the other hasn't heard or isn't aware of. So I listen to the stuff that you give me while I'm doing dishes.
Okay.
Because I need like busy work and I want something loud while I do that.
Yep.
And so I did dishes, and then I went to go pick up my kids from school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was quiet the whole time, and I noted that about myself, is that I'm being quiet because I've got this emotion from this this music going through my soul, if it were.
I was listening to it today while I was doing, or maybe that was yesterday. No, that would have been this today when I was working, when I was doing my music logs in the studio, and after that, like I kind of took my headphones off and sort of sat there for a little bit, and it's just like, okay, I'm a little drained from that. It is somewhat of an emotionally draining album.
Yeah.
That's not always a bad thing.
No, that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I usually look on that sort of quality positively. Mm-hmm. But if you're not one for I guess kind of depressing stuff, then maybe this one ain't for you. But if you're open to that kind of experience, go ahead. You should be open to experiences. Everyone should be open to new experiences sometimes,
especially
at least when it comes to music, because it has no consequence to you.
You know, when you go to a movie with a friend and you and that friend come out of the movie silent, that's kind of this album. That's sort of how this one is.
Yeah. It's usually the mark of a good movie
Yeah.
when you're just sitting there in awe of it.
Yeah.
So yeah. What time is it? I suppose we're at about time. By the way, the big game happened.
The big Hey, this is a landmark for me. I actually watched a football game.
You actually watched a football game?
I watched a football game. You know, in 45 years, I
have you never watched a football game on television before?
I've never watched a whole football game on television before.
Wow.
And last weekend was my birthday.
That is right. I had almost forgotten. Well, I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's all right.
I'm terrible.
You know, only really one person gave me a gift.
Who gave you a gift?
Christopher.
Oh, yeah. We won't get into Christopher here. But how was your birthday besides?
It was great. Went out for hot wings and watched a movie with the family.
You got blazing wings, didn't you?
I did not get blazing wings. I was going to, but I just got the wild wings.
Okay.
If you can guess what chicken wing place we went to.
Maybe they're made of buffalo?
There was no buffalo in
there. Was no buffalo there.
But yeah, I was going to get the blazing, but I wanted to actually
be operable for the rest of the remainder of your birthday.
Right, because we were going to watch a movie and I didn't want to spend the whole time on the toilet.
Going, oh God, why'd I do that?
Although I like ghost pepper stuff, so
yeah, you and spicy food. You're part of what has inspired me to start getting a little bit more into spicy food because your quest lately has been to get your hands on a Carolina Reaper.
Yeah,
which you're fucking insane, by the way.
I am fucking insane.
I don't know what's wrong with you that you want to subject your body to that, but you do you.
You know, it's good to have a day off when you do that.
Yeah, you're gonna need to.
I want to do that on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. I think as soon as you can sleep that off, the better. I think.
Well, yeah. Well, and you're gonna spend alone time.
Some alone time.
There's gonna be some alone time
on the porcelain throne
with the kids going, Dad.
Are you alive? Go away! My stomach is dissolving.
Great punctuation.
A burp is good punctuation for any sentence, I find. It just adds a certain quality to any sentence.
So what do we have coming up this week? Anything interesting?
Coming up this week, I don't really have anything. I've got D&D tomorrow, but
D&D tomorrow?
I don't really have anything else going on in my life coming up as far as I'm aware of. I can't think of anything in particular that I'm going to be doing. Just playing some video games and going to work and
get back to God of War.
Yeah,
you got to finish the game.
I know.
So we can talk about it.
I know. We've already discussed how I already know all the spoilers.
Spoiled the whole thing. Yeah,
I already know all the spoilers. I got the chisel, so I'm on my way towards the end of the game. I'm pretty sure, but
yeah,
I'll get there.
So some friends of mine and I, by the way, we try to do this every year, and we've this week sort of come to almost solidify plans for a gaming weekend. We rent a bed and breakfast somewhere.
Yep.
And we're gonna try and do that and just play games.
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
The one that one of the ones you had gone to previously was a weird moment of coincidence between you and me because you had stayed with a guy that I had met at the Renaissance Fair, who runs this Viking merch booth, who I bought my drinking horn from.
He also has a B&B in Minnesota, which is Viking themed. You do Viking themed stuff all weekend.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
And he's this huge dude with a huge dog. I think it's like an Irish wolfhound or something.
It's what the hell is it? It's one of those horse dogs.
Yeah, it's frickin' massive.
Yeah.
This dog is huge. And yeah, I met him, very enthusiastic man. Yeah. I think that's the best thing to say about him. Is he's very enthusiastic. Yeah, I've got nothing else going. So what are you bringing to the podcast next week?
I am bringing next week something that's that well predates you. That I don't know how you're going to feel about it. I don't know if you're going to like it because we're doing Female February.
Yes.
So we're doing a band called Snow White.
Snow White.
Snow White with a Z.
Okay.
The album is called Act of God, and they are like. I mean, there's everybody in the band. There's white, black, female. I mean, it's like a Benetton ad.
Very diverse band. Okay,
it is, and it was very good. I remember listening to it many times over and over and over, but they kind of went nowhere.
That's a shame.
If you can find a copy of the album and give it a listen before next week, it's very thrash.
Okay,
it's very thrash metal, and she's very. God, it's hard to explain what her vocals are like.
Well, I'll just have to experience them.
You have to give it a listen.
We'll see if we can figure out how to explain them next week.
Mm-hmm.
Week after that, I'm going to be bringing Ginger, which is a Ukrainian, I guess, metalcore, sort of alt metal progressive type band. They're also hard to categorize. And I think maybe next week, if I remember, I'd like to do like an honorable mentions list.
Okay.
Before we get back to all the male albums,
all the dude metal,
all the dude metal. But I'll see if I can find some bands that are worthy of a shout out. If you really want to be looking for like women in metal and that sort of thing, because there are a lot of them. It's just the thing with metal is it is a very, very male genre.
Oh yeah.
It is more so than I think most other genres. There are very few high profile women in heavy metal. There are plenty of high profile women in hip hop these days. Lots of high profile women in country and in pop and in most every other genre. There are very few high profile women in metal.
Right, and very few in the audience. I mean, it's
that too.
It's geared towards dudes. I remember when I was a kid in the late 1980s and early 1990s. I used to get a video on VHS series once a month. It was called Hard and Heavy.
Okay.
And there was no porn on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that does sound a very porny thing.
It was no porn. It was all interviews with heavy metal bands. And I remember I can't remember what band it was that was talking about. The interview asked them, what about girls? Do you get a lot of girls following you at the shows? And they said, look, unless you're into dudes, metal's really not. You got to really love the music.
Yeah, that's not really. And at least at that time, I think now I know plenty of women who are into metal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I've met and that are in the community here. But I think it's certainly gotten better over the years. But it's diverse. Still, the genre has gotten more diverse, but there's still sort of a long way to go in that sense. And maybe you can make the argument that the atmosphere just doesn't appeal, and that can be sort of a difficult way in.
The aggressive nature of it?
Yeah, we're not gender studies, officials here,
no.
So we're not going to dig ourselves into any holes.
And it's weird anyway because we're talking about it's aggressive for dudes. You and I are the least aggressive dudes.
Yeah, we're two
most docile. Yeah.
Two extremely docile goofballs. Yeah. And we're not the guys going to every concert in battle vests trying to start fights and getting drunk. And
in fact, that was always a big thing for me in high school. I remember there was this group of girls that were really into metal. And for me, that was like, there might as well have just been lights behind them and angels singing over them at all times.
I've had that experience. A lot as well. Is just that like when you go to a show and you see a pretty girl or a bunch of pretty girls, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, what? But I don't know. I think that's I'm growing up slowly, so I think I do less of that. But
let me tell you, my friend, as a man who's twice your age, you'll never grow out of that. That's nothing you're never going to grow out of. If a pretty girl or even any girl, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she has an arm growing out of her forehead and she comes up to you and she says, "Hey, did you hear that new Overkill album?" You're gonna go, "What?
What now?" Yeah, that's probably right. I remember before because we need to wrap up, but before we do, I wanted to tell a story of one of the first concerts I went to.
Yeah.
That I at least drove out to, because I haven't gone to a ton of shows in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I always say I need to go to more, but it's not always possible because of where we live. And I drove out to Moorhead for For All Those Sleeping show I mentioned, where there's a metalcore band that I went to their last show ever.
Sure.
Either that or it was a Carnifex show, which is a deathcore band that I went to at the same place. And I remember me and my buddy and my buddy's buddy were standing there, and this just 10 out of 10 girl walks by us.
Mm-hmm.
And we all kind of stared for a second, and then my buddy's buddy goes, "Man, I'd divorce her."
What?
And I think I followed that up with, "I'd disappoint her so much."
I would disappoint her every day.
So that's just a brief experience of the type of.
Oh man, I'd pee in her butt.
No,
I've heard that one a couple of times as well.
Okay, yeah, I think we're done. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we're not gender studies people.
No, exactly.
Good
yeah, my
God.
wife says we're silly, by the way.
We are silly. Your wife is right.
She's 100% correct.
We're extremely silly people. All right, time for us to get this shit over with.
All right.
If you like these two silly people, these two being us, you can please check us out on social media. We always post links to our episodes, if that's an easy way for you to get updated. And it's also a really convenient place for you to spread the word about our podcast. If you hit share or retweet on Twitter, or I always mention Instagram, we have it there. You can follow it.
It doesn't get updated very often.
It doesn't get updated, but I feel obligated to mention it because one of these days I'll post something, but probably I won't. So yeah, you can use those platforms and spread the word about us. It's really super easy. It will take you 3 seconds. If you think more people should be listening to us, go ahead and do that. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. So thank you all very much for listening to another episode of the Bronze Medalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations.